Welcome to the Rugby Obsession Deep Dive. Today we are stepping into, well, a truly bizarre and, frankly, slightly frustrating corner of the sports conversation. We're looking at this strange phenomenon of public criticism, sometimes, quite nasty criticism, aimed at one of rugby's absolute greatest talents, Antoine Dupont. And the really baffling part, this all kicked off while he was just recovering from a pretty serious injury.
Yeah, it's almost a classic case study, isn't it? How modern celebrity kind of clashes with these traditional sports expectations. So our mission for you, the listener, is to take the info we've got here and really understand what this term Dupont bashing actually means, why this strange negativity even started, and maybe most importantly, why top figures in French rugby felt they absolutely had to jump in and defend him.
Right. So if you're intensely curious about how player celebrity might impact injury recovery, or maybe you just appreciate a good shortcut to getting up to speed, we really encourage you to subscribe to Rugby Obsession for more knowledge shortcuts like this one. And look, we want to know your thoughts too. Does an athlete's injury give the public some kind of right to scrutinize every single aspect of their downtime? Let's unpack this weird narrative.
Okay, so the phrase itself, Dupont bashing, it's now officially part of the French rugby language.
Yeah.
And we know exactly who coined it. Toulouse head coach Ugo Mola, he used it to describe the public reaction to his star player's rehab.
Yeah, and to really get the picture, we need the injury timeline first. I mean, this wasn't just a minor knock. Dupont ruptured his cruciate ligaments, that's the ACL, back in March playing for France against Ireland. That's a brutal injury, season-defining usually. But what's fascinating, really, is an ambition for the comeback. Midi Olympique, the big French rugby paper, they reported he was aiming for a return before the end of the year, targeting that Toulouse match against Montauban on November 22nd. Wow, that's incredibly fast for an ACL tear, isn't it? It suggests some really intense, dedicated work behind the scenes.
Exactly. And part of that dedication, we know, involved him visiting a well-known clinic over in Qatar for specialized strength and conditioning work. So this was a top-tier global approach to getting fit again.
Okay, so the rehab was clearly serious, intense even.
Absolutely. But, even with intense physio and conditioning, there are still periods of required rest. R&R, especially over those summer months. And this is where the trouble really started. The core criticism didn't stem from him not training, but actually from how Dupont spent that medically necessary downtime.
And his downtime wasn't exactly keeping a low profile, was it? The specifics are quite telling. He was very visible, seen with TV personality and former Miss Universe Iris Mittenaere at Roland Garros for the tennis. Then later, he's walking the red carpet at the Cannes Film Festival. So he wasn't just in the sports pages. He was popping up in glossy celebrity magazines, pictures from Spain, Italy, even L.A.
Yeah, and what's truly, astonishing here is how quickly a maybe small but loud minority basically weaponized those images. The reports suggest these critics were spiteful and resentful. They looked at these high-profile appearances and just decided he'd lost his famous focus. The argument, kind of reductive, but it was out there, was that Dupont had somehow become more celebrity than Scrum-half.
That just feels incredibly harsh, doesn't it? I mean, to take a few weeks of rest and relaxation when you're months into what must be an emotionally and physically draining rehab, and twist that into some kind of betrayal of the game, it sounds like a complete loss of perspective.
It really does, and that's exactly why his head coach, Ugo Mola, felt he had to step in. Mola wasn't just, defending his player. He was actively trying to manage this media narrative. He basically told people publicly to stop reading too much into ordinary photos and falling into this trap of negativity. He actually had to remind people that just because Dupont isn't posting training pics on Instagram 24/7, it doesn't mean he isn't training hard somewhere else.
Okay, but let's play devil's advocate for a second. Mola's defense, is it completely bulletproof? For a player with such an aggressive recovery timeline, couldn't you argue the optics of, continuous sunbathing and glamour events might raise some questions, even if he's training privately?
Well, Mola's response kind of addressed that too. He explained why external rehab is often necessary for these serious long-term injuries. He said, look, if a player is out for more than 6, maybe 8 weeks, they often need to step away from the day-to-day club environment. Partly, to get specialist advice, like that Qatar clinic, but also, as Mola put it, to gain a kind of freshness, get away from the relentless grind at the club.
Right, and that idea of freshness, it feels critical when you think about the emotional side of it all.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine the huge mental hurdle of being sidelined when your whole career, your identity is built around playing. We're talking months of not being able to do the one thing you're known for, the thing you love.
Precisely. That's the connection Mola was trying to make. And you see this reflected in other players' experiences, too. Think of Dan Cole, the former Leicester and England prop. He talked about his 10 months out with a neck injury and described it as just massively boring. He felt like he had nothing to get up for each day because his main purpose was gone. So the misery of a bad injury isn't just physical, it's almost existential. Distraction or having some external focus, it almost becomes a necessity, not just some luxury indulgence.
Okay, but here's the obvious difference, right? Dan Cole, hugely respected player, but he isn't a global household name in the same way. Dupont is. Well, he's arguably the greatest talent in the world right now. When you reach that level, the opportunities, the invites, the freebies, as you might call them, they just follow because of who you are.
Exactly right. Event organizers, they know that having the Antoine Dupont, a genuine superstar in France, and increasingly everywhere on their guest list, that's fantastic for their brand image. So Dupont accepting those invites, which you could argue are a form of recognition for his global fame, it just happens to occur during his medically advised rest period. The critics are essentially asking him to somehow hide his own celebrity status, which is, it's a direct result of how good he is at rugby.
Yeah, that makes the criticism seem even more illogical, especially when you factor in the commercial side of modern elite sport. And this is where Max Guazzini's perspective is really interesting. He's the guy who gave Stade Francais that famous showbiz makeover years ago. Pink shirts, cheerleaders, all that. He understands rugby celebrity.
Oh, Guazzini's counter-argument was probably the strongest and definitely the most colorful. He flat out called the people criticizing Dupont for appearing in magazines imbeciles. His point was bigger than just Dupont, though. He argued the entire rugby world should actually be celebrating having Antoine Dupont. Because his charisma, his visibility, even just his pleasant public image, these are vital tools for growing the game, especially in today's super competitive global sports market.
That really shifts the focus, doesn't it? From player focus to maybe a cultural clash, this whole Dupont bashing thing, it kind of confirms that this urge to, what's the phrase, cut down tall poppies. It isn't just an Anglophone thing. French sporting culture seems to struggle with this too, this tension between, traditional, almost monastic devotion to training and the reality of being a modern, marketable superstar.
Absolutely. And you really see that cultural, maybe slightly blinkered view when you compare it to the international reaction. Outside of France, the general feeling seems to be just adoration, really. Our sources mentioned the buzz, the excitement generated in Britain just from a photo circulating of Dupont training in an LA gym. The one under that huge Red Bull logo.
That photo caused such a stir. Respected papers like The Times were running these totally speculative pieces about him joining some fictional team like the Newcastle Red Bulls.
Yeah.
The fact that a single training photo, taken stateside, generates that level of international excitement and, aspiration, it just proves his market value, right? And his contribution to the global profile of rugby union.
It absolutely does. It showcases the global fascination with him, which, again, is exactly what Guazzini was saying, should be cherished, not criticized. And it also reminds us that Dupont himself is pretty aware of his status and often delivers it with that trademark dry wit. Remember back in 2019 when someone asked him about maybe playing in England one day? He just smiled and said, if global warming continues, why not?
Classic. Look, we are genuinely passionate about this stuff, this whole intersection of sport and celebrity, the pressure put on a, let's face it, generation-defining talent just for resting. It's fascinating. So we really want to know your thoughts on this modern scrutiny. Are we maybe demanding too much privacy from our superstars, or is it fair game? Please subscribe to Rugby Obsession. Help us keep digging into these topics, and definitely let us know your comments and opinions. We do read them.
So if we were to kind of synthesize the core message from all the rugby experts we've talked about today, the overwhelming feeling, the consensus, it's pretty clear. The rugby world needs to maybe take a step back from the negativity and just appreciate this player who has given so much, not just his incredible skill, but also that global attention to his club, Toulouse, and to France over the last decade.
Yeah. And that brings us perfectly to our final provocative thought for you, the listener. It's drawn right from the sentiment in our source material. You will genuinely miss this little genius, as they call him, when he eventually decides to hang up his boots. So maybe the time to celebrate him, even during his injury downtime, is actually right now. Make the most of him while he's here. Thank you for listening to the Rugby Obsession Deep Dive. We look forward to you listening to our next episode. Don't forget to subscribe to Rugby Obsession